Alright, so pro-choice protesters have been taking to the streets all across the country, including outside the homes of conservative Supreme Court justices who are currently trying to take away their civil liberties, their constitutional rights, and inflicting institutional violence on millions of women across the country. So I'm going to give you some different takes here from conservatives, from liberals, and from Joe Biden himself on exactly how they feel about this type of protesting outside of their homes, and then I'll give you guys my opinion at the end. So, here from the White House, they are warning against violence, threats, or vandalism after protests outside Supreme Court justices' homes. So none of these things that I've been aware of at all none of these protests have included really violence, threats, or vandalism, but this is a statement that Joe Biden decided to focus on in the wake of this assault on abortion rights. So here from CNN, they say the White House on Monday condemned violence, threats, or vandalism after protesters held demonstrations outside the homes of conservative Supreme Court justices over the weekend, and White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, who's going to be leaving soon, reiterated the Biden administration's support for the right to protest, but said the justices should not feel that their safety is in jeopardy. It's not in jeopardy, okay? Nobody's safety is in jeopardy. They've been peacefully protesting outside the homes of these justices. Nobody's throwing bricks or rocks through their windows. Nobody's, lighting their houses on fire or doing anything like that. They've just been protesting outside. So again, completely ridiculous that this is the standard that they're setting up here, as if there's any legitimate threat to their safety. But here's the quote here from Jen Psaki. She says, "POTUS strongly believes in the constitutional right to protest." Does he really? But that should never include violence, threats, or vandalism. Judges perform an incredibly important function in our society, and they must be able to do their jobs without concern for their personal safety, Psaki said in a tweet on Monday morning. So again, completely pathetic, both because these protests outside of their homes have not been violent in the first place. They're not engaging in vandalism. They're not threatening anybody. They're actually engaging in their constitutional right to protest, which is what Joe Biden claims that he supports here. So not exactly sure at a time like this why you would be coming out with this type of statement. And I mean, if it's to appease conservatives and try to pretend like you're being politically neutral in this circumstance, well, here's the response from the conservative propaganda network Fox News. They say critics slam White House statement on road protests a day late and $1 short. So again, you're never going to be able to appease these people because they're monumental freaks who only really care about prioritizing their extreme right-wing reactionary policy agenda. So you're never going to appease them, but nonetheless, Joe Biden doing Joe Biden things, and they continue here with a little bit more details on the protests. I'll show you guys a video of them here in a second, but they say over the weekend, pro-abortion rights protesters gathered outside the homes of Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Chief Justice John Roberts in Chevy Chase, Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C. And they say the protests were organized in part by Kavanaugh's own neighbor, Lacey Wooten Hallway, who told the Washington Post, quote, "I organized peaceful candlelit vigils in front of his house. We're about to get doomsday, so I'm not going to be civil to that man at all." So absolutely based response here, and we've actually seen a lot of people coming out and being like, well, what about his poor neighbors who are having to suffer from these protesters who are, chanting pro-abortion things outside of his house? Well, again, it was literally organized by his own fucking neighbors. So completely disingenuous argument, but short little clip here to show you guys a little bit of a glimpse into what these protests look like.
We will not go back. I see you, buddy. We will not go back. We will not go back. We will not go back.
So, okay, you guys get the point. They're out there just basically doing chants and shit like that, but a little bit more details here. They say, while the protests around the country have largely been peaceful, law enforcement officials in the nation's capital have been bracing for potential security risks. And last week, an 8-foot-tall, non-scalable fence was installed around parts of the Supreme Court building, and crews set up concrete jersey barriers blocking the street in front of the Supreme Court, a sign that officials are worried that protests, which have so far been peaceful, could turn less so. So this is also part of this, right? If the argument is, well, you shouldn't go to their homes, you should be protesting outside of the Supreme Court, well, they're literally preventing people from fucking protesting outside of the Supreme Court. So what exactly do you want people to do? You just want people to show up to the ballot box, as Joe Biden and Democrats have been using this issue to fundraise, to use this as a political wedge issue for the midterms, while they're simultaneously doing absolutely nothing to actually substantively protect abortion rights in this country. I mean, what the fuck do you want people to do? It's not acceptable to protest at their homes. It's not acceptable acceptable, apparently, to protest at the Supreme Court. They literally just want people to sit down and accept this. But again, Joe Biden, not only, not really being offensive in any way, shape, or form in protecting abortion rights at the federal level, but he came out recently and openly said that he's not in favor of using the one strategy, or one of very few strategies, that Democrats could be using right now in order to codify Roe at the federal level. So again, here from CNN, they say Biden says the right to choose is fundamental, but is not prepared to call for change in the filibuster to protect abortion rights. So I want you guys to understand something. Given the current political makeup of the Senate, and given whatever the inevitable makeup is going to be post-2022 midterm elections, even in the dream scenario for Democrats, let's assume they pick up a couple Senate seats here and there, you are going to have to 100%, this is the only way, get rid of the filibuster in order to protect abortion rights, whether that means you're going to install more Supreme Court justices and pack the court with liberals, or whether it means passing the Women's Health Protection Act at the federal level. You are going to need to get rid of the filibuster in order to do that. You are not going to get 60 senators, no matter what dream scenario you want to conjure up in your head. That is 100% statistically impossible for Democrats to accomplish in the 2022 midterms. So what exactly is your strategy for protecting what you call is a fundamental right in this country? They have no strategy whatsoever to get this done. Biden is not only not pressuring the members of his own party who are not willing to get rid of the filibuster, but he himself is not willing to get rid of the filibuster in order to make this happen. So this is Democrats telling you straight up, and I'm not like extremely anti-electoralism. I'm not against people voting, but this is Democrats in a very clear way telling you that it does not matter if you vote in 2022 in the midterms and elect more Democrats, more Democratic senators. It does not matter, because the president is not going to be willing to apply pressure or even publicly say that he's in favor of using the one strategy that you would have to implement in order to protect abortion rights. You could not possibly ask for a more pathetic response from the Democratic establishment, in tandem with not only these statements from Joe Biden, but you also have motherfuckers like Jim Clyburn and Nancy Pelosi, who are going down to Texas right now to campaign on behalf of the one anti-choice Democrat in the House of Representatives, Henry Cuellar, against his progressive opponent, who is very pro-choice and pro-abortion rights. So this is the Democratic establishment for you. I mean, they're doing absolutely fucking nothing to protect your rights in this circumstance. But again, I told you we would get to a couple different takes here. We saw some from conservatives. We saw some from the White House. We also had some, liberal commentators here. So just one example from CNN's John Harwood. He says, "It is wrong to even hint at physically threatening a public official." So this is the same fucking clip that I just showed you guys, where they're standing outside and just doing chants like, "We will not go back," okay? Where exactly is the implicit hinting at physically threatening these judges? It's completely non-existent. And again, at a fundamental level here, what are these Supreme Court justices doing? They're taking away a constitutional right that is going to enable conservative legislators in conservative states, but also if Republicans win in 2022, they're going to be doing that abortion ban at the federal level that I talked about in my last video. This is these Supreme Court justices setting up a standard that is going to kill women, okay? It is going to result in more deaths from women who are forced to go and get back alley abortions. It is jeopardizing the health and safety of millions and millions of women across the country and eroding constitutionally protected rights, okay? That is the situation. That is what Supreme Court justices are doing. Why the fuck do they deserve to sleep peacefully in this instance? They don't. There's this inability for Democrats and Republicans in many instances to understand what institutionalized violence is. This is what institutionalized violence is. It is no different or no better than people standing outside chanting, or even if they were implicitly threatening these judges, which I'm not necessarily in favor of like threatening their lives or their families or anything, but they're wielding this institutional violence while simultaneously pretending like they're the victims in this circumstance. It's completely backwards and completely ridiculous. But we had a couple more takes here that I think were actually good on this issue. So here from Caitlin Burns, she says, Brett Kavanaugh is safer in his own home during these protests than any abortion clinic worker in this country is on a daily basis. And she's 100% correct, because not only is Brett Kavanaugh's life not under threat, but the lives of these abortion clinic workers have been under threat for years now. I mean, how many times have we seen reactionary, right-wing, anti-abortion conservatives showing up at these abortion clinics, harassing women, in some cases even attempting or successfully bombing abortion clinics? I mean, these are the same people who wield this violence, whether whether institutional or on a personal basis, they wield this violence against pro-choice people on a daily basis. They've been doing this for years now, and the Supreme Court is basically pretending like they're the victim in this circumstance as they make these types of completely regressive and backwards decisions. Now, another take that I think is completely accurate in this circumstance as well, here from Robin Swirling, she says, a protest march that the people in power approve of is just a parade. And that's 100% right here. I mean, listen, you can come out and say that you're in favor of peacefully protesting and all that. That's fine. That's great. But at the end of the day, if you're not making people in power uncomfortable, if you are not making them fearful, and I don't mean in the sense that they're fearing for their own lives or their families' lives, I mean fearful in the sense that they are scared of a popular uprising, a democratic uprising against their corruption and against their authoritarian policies and decision making, they should be fearful of that. That's what a democracy is. If you just have these unelected lawyers who are represented in the Supreme Court, who most of them, or a large majority of them, were appointed by Republicans, were appointed for political reasons, were appointed in many cases by Republicans who didn't even win the popular vote, well, how the fuck are we supposed to respect this institution? Why should we give them the ability to feel comfortable in these types of circumstances as they are actively taking away constitutional rights, as they are putting the lives, the health, the safety of women in jeopardy by making these decisions? It's completely ridiculous. So no, you shouldn't listen to the Biden administration. No, you shouldn't listen to conservatives who are pretending like they're the victims in this circumstance. Of course, Supreme Court justices should feel uncomfortable in this circumstance. Of course they should. That's what it means to live in a democracy where you have a popular uprising of people who are not just going to lay back and let a massive right-wing reactionary takeover of their country happen. Okay, so, I hope that these protests continue. I hope that they ramp up the pressure, and I hope that every single Supreme Court justice and every single conservative politician within the Republican Party, but also within the Democratic Party, feels this pressure from the American people and understands that we're not just going to sit back and let this assault on our civil liberties and rights happen peacefully.